Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's spring update and chat. I'm Matthew Polinsky with the Manitoba Tech Transfer Program. So I work with the Manitoba Beekeepers Association. I've kind of called it a spring update and follow up to some of the meetings and conversations that I've been having with beekeepers. But I woke up to snow on the ground here in the Winnipeg area. So I think today's May 6th. It feels like the last day of winter. But I will chat a little bit about what we've been hearing this spring and then really dig deeper into that with our two guests, Nazariy and Ian Stepler. So tonight, the idea for this live stream came about because after the Brandon Area Beekeepers Association meeting on April 21st, it was a long meeting, a good meeting. It almost went up to 3 hours. I talked for maybe 10 minutes there, but I didn't want to go on too long. And I think I also maybe forgot a few things. So I was thinking to send out a message via Nazariy, but then I thought, well, maybe I'll send out a video. And I thought, well, if I send out a video, I might as well invite Naz. And then I thought, well, I might as well invite Ian. And then I thought I might as well live stream it. So let's just get it all done and have a quick chat here tonight. I really appreciate the Brandon Area Beekeepers for putting on that meeting and for Naz for organizing. I do find it's pretty special to have 30 to 40 beekeepers come out. A lot of them are, I would say, in that 100 to 500 and 1,000 hive range, but largely commercial sideline beekeepers. So it's not every day that we get 30 of them in a room having a conversation. And for me, I can kind of put something up on the website, social media, make a video like this anytime, but being in that room with beekeepers, listening, getting feedback from them, that's the purpose of being there. So I just thought I'd take tonight to be able to talk a little bit more. So I'll talk for about 10 minutes, and you can put any of your comments, questions into the chat on whatever channel you're watching on, and they'll come up. I'll try to address them later on. I just wanted to mention, I guess, where I began at the Brandon meeting. And I know some of you are going to get tired of me for saying this, but it's also clear that not everyone is aware or not always around when I do repeat this next fact, and that's who I work for. So I do not work for the university here. I'm not an employee of the government. I'm not a bee inspector, but I do work for the MBA, the Manitoba Beekeepers Association. My salary is paid by a grant that the MBA secured from the provincial and federal government, Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership Grant. So I'm directed by the MBA in all my mission and my research and extension activities. I do collaborate with academia nationally and other tech programs with our provincial apiarist. But what the work I do is determined by and for Manitoba beekeepers. So if you're a member of the MBA, you definitely have a voice with your board, and that board and the KRTP steering committee ultimately directs what I do. So I'm not going to get too much into like a general overview of the program. That's kind of online, and I give these out at our convention and in our newsletters and stuff. Tonight, I'm just going to touch on a few topics that maybe I couldn't entirely speak on the other night, and just follow up on a few points. So for our 2026 field season, we are working with Greenlight Biosciences again, testing Naroa. This is our 4th year of working with them, and we'll be testing some new formulations this year. They have run 7 trials in Canada. 3 of those have been in Manitoba, and we'll be doing a 4th this year. So we was sort of brought up the value of making sure that we could test that product to its full extent here in Manitoba, and that when they they'll have all of the data they need for potential application and registration here in Canada. I do receive that question again, is Naroa registered in Canada? No, not yet. It is registered in the United States, but they have submitted an application for registration with the PMRA, and it's under review. So that's that. One thing I didn't get to mention at any of the meetings this spring was that last year we've been collecting mites. So we asked beekeepers to collect a pooled sample of mites from their from a single bee yard, a single apiary. We need 16 mites or 16 to 20 mites in a sample. So what we do with those is we send them for testing to the National Bee Diagnostic Center, and they have a project ongoing looking for mutations associated with miticide resistance in Canada. So they've been collecting samples from all across Canada, and this is going to give them an idea of the extent of resistance in our mite populations and also the geographical distribution. One thing I know that people, whether they have some resistance in their mite population or not, which I think probably most of us do to some extent, if you can collect the mites and send them in to me, contact me and I'll give you all the instructions. They're also up on the website. But you may be comfortable with managing them, managing the mites in your operation right now, but this could give you a bit of data there, but it also gives kind of this data to all of Canada to understand the distribution. Not only that, there's a lot of people who haven't been using strips for a long time, but they'll still see resistance showing up in their operations. So that'll help researchers better understand what's going on there. Another project that we did last year was working with a beekeeper to test the Delan AFB vaccine. So the AFB vaccine is a vaccine where you can get these vaccinated queens that have been exposed to the Panabacillus larvae bacterium. And there's been some suggestions that it may have an extra benefit of reducing viral levels in the colonies. So we were doing an experiment that used 83 colonies, all queens from the same queen mother, half vaccinated, half unvaccinated, and looking at survivorship and virus levels. Those were our main concerns. We received funding to do that by Project APIS-M grant. Virus testing is very expensive, so just want to acknowledge that Project APIS-M is funding that experiment. And just in terms of a couple of services that we typically offer with the tech transfer program here, we do offer syrup testing, looking at pH and the titratable acidity of syrup. So this is usually more relevant in the fall if you've had some fresh syrup in the spring and you've held it over through the summer and you're wondering, is it still kind of good to feed to the bees, or might it have a harmful impact on them? You could send me a sample and I will test it. A lot of information on that up on the website that explains how we do it. But essentially, even if you're not quite sure, you don't want to send in a sample, even doing some dilution with fresh syrup could be helpful. So you're not feeding one very acidic syrup all to 1 yard. Rather, you would be diluting it and fixing the problem a bit. But that is not the only solution, and it's best to just send a sample, and it's easy for us to test. Each spring, we do offer a hygienic testing services, so doing freeze-kill brood assays. This is a test for checking the hygienic behavior of bees. So we check the breeder colonies. We use liquid nitrogen, freeze-kill a patch of brood, and then the beekeeper takes a photo 24 hours later to see how much brood the bees have cleaned out. We have worked with UBO in the past, but we won't be offering any services on that this year. And I am hoping to get some pin kill test stamps. So pin kill is kind of just killing each pupae one by one, but there's these stamps now that you can use. So it's a quick and easy way that beekeepers can actually do these tests on their own. Although I just want to get that tool and get it out to some beekeepers so they can try it and give some feedback on evaluating their colonies using that test. One of the sort of other hot topics that's come up over the winter, and I guess especially because I've been working on this project over the winter, has been testing oxalic acid glycerin strips in an indoor wintering setting. So we're on our second year of doing this experiment. We're collaborating with the University of Saskatchewan, Dr. Sarah Wood, and Dr. Alvaro de la Mora Pena. So they had some experiments going on in Saskatchewan last year and this year, and we've had ours going on here in Manitoba. Last year, we, again, repeated the previous year's experiment. So we used 3 different doses of oxalic acid. One group had amitraz, so Apivar, and one group was an uncontrolled sham treatment. So the sham had no active ingredient. Apivar, low dose, which was 1 strip, a mid dose, which was 2 strips, and a standard dose of oxalic acid glycerin, which was 4 strips. So what we called the high dose, although this would really just be a standard dose in the rest of the year, but we considered it a high dose for winter. We kind of have some preliminary results on that, but nothing has been analyzed. I've put out some videos with Phil Veldhuis, Phil the Bee Man, that explains a bit of the experiment setup, so you could check that out. But I won't go too deep into that right now, other than to say we're seeing some poor outcomes with the standard or high dose post-wintering. The low and mid dose are a little bit unclear. The sham and Apivar groups had really good sized clusters coming out of winter, but the high dose definitely had a smaller cluster. In terms of the weights, the Apivar group and the high dose or standard dose oxalic glycerin, the Apivar group and high dose came out with like a 20 to 30% weight loss compared to the low and mid dose and sham. And again, this isn't like analyzed data. This is just preliminary results, doing the field assessments and taking the notes, taking the weights, doing the cluster sizing, but that's not analyzed data. I'm going to leave that to our collaborators in Saskatchewan to take this data, analyze it, and then we'll get back to you some like more clear results in the end. But definitely some challenges there, or dangers with treating over the winter in the indoor wintering building. It's been mentioned and talked about a lot that outdoor versus indoor is a whole different thing. And in Saskatchewan, they are doing experiments on outdoor wintered colonies. So we'll look to them to hear more on that. I know Ian's probably and Naz might have some questions on that, so I might just leave that for now. I guess we started that work about 2 years ago, and we have heard a lot of stories from the field here in Canada and some over the US where people have been leaving oxalic strips in or putting them in just before winter and having some higher than usual losses. And I guess it's starting to become a theme. So I hope that this work will help inform the larger beekeeping community that once we get the data out. I guess I'll just end it here, and I'll open up the conversation to Naz and Ian to jump in, and we can take it from there. You guys want to test your mics and see if you're...
Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so thanks for joining. I know Ian just jumped in from the field. I don't think he's had any dinner yet, but
I don't need to eat. Eating's overrated anyways, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess since that last meeting there in Brandon, most of the people were coming out of winter. At least a lot of the people around the table were fairly optimistic. There were definitely some pockets of high loss, and I've heard of different areas around Manitoba where definitely there's high losses in pockets. I don't really know what's conspired since then in terms of hearing about more people with high losses, but people came out generally feeling optimistic. Now, just for context, for anybody not from Manitoba, we've been now in sort of 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks behind of where we'd like to be. I think the spring dwindle has really taken hold. So I was just wondering what you guys have seen in your operation and what you've heard from across the province. So we'll start with, I guess, Ian.
No, let's start with Naz. I want Naz to start. If Naz has big, strong colonies, I'm going to have big, strong colonies too.
Okay, let's do this way. Yeah, there is a different stories around, and that's what I'm hearing. But definitely a lot more dwindling because of this cold weather, and I hearing more and more beekeepers they worrying about that, and things was looking good 2 weeks ago, but we never had any good weather. We never had fly weather, and they wasn't bringing any pollen. And in my apiary, that's what I noticed, significant dwindle, especially with the smaller colonies. Whatever was strong coming off the winter, they are doing good, but something manageable 2 weeks ago now becoming a problem. And that's what I'm hearing from other beekeepers. Yeah,
about the same with me too. If we would have had a good start to spring when I set the colonies out, I would have had like just fantastic results. We put them down, they look good, but they maybe had one day of flight at that time, and then it's just been cold, so cold and slow, and they had no chance to get out and fly. And if they did, it was only for a day and then back down to cold. So, then how many days of pollen have we had, Naz? Would be 5, I think, the most.
I had 2.
2 days. Yeah, I probably had a few more days than you. And those bees worked hard. They brought a lot in. And I could tell that they're building the nest. This last weekend, because all of a sudden they turned to the syrup and they've taken that gallon down pretty much when I put it on the weekend. They must be building something down there. But this cold weather is frustrating because, the nests are good. They're capable. But when they build out as much as they can, they're pretty ambitious in the spring. And then they shrink because it gets so cold. And then, it's if they try to build out to the edges, it just is eliminated when they tighten back up. So there hasn't been any real progression in the nest. They're just pretty much holding the line. Like they come out big, they're still big, they're not growing. They come out kind of medium, they're still medium, they're not growing. Come out small, I had to boost the small ones because they were just falling apart, right? So I'm hearing much the same as what Naz is, and with other guys too. It's just a cold, long, slow spring.
Yeah, we've been adding some brood around, shuffling some brood around to boost those weak ones, because there is and the other thing, quite a few beekeepers mentioned last fall, there was a higher than normal super seizures for queen replacement in the fall, and that's what I'm noticing this spring. These queens, they got going a little bit too late than usual, and this is the mostly weak colony. So these ones we're trying to save because we mark them usually, and if we see that they were tagged the last year queen, and that's the one we boost. Yeah, trying to save it. Yeah.
What have you heard about any?
Is your wrap? Oh, sorry, Matthew stepped on you.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, Naz, if you noticed any difference between your outdoor colonies and your indoor colonies. I'm just going to lead to a guess that you're probably going to say your outdoor colonies wintered better than the indoor ones this year. Am I right?
You are right. It just like when we bring our indoor colonies, we still wrap them up, but they never had a chance. Like outdoor colonies, they about 3 to 4 weeks ahead. Just because of that little patch of brood, they start to rear end of February, beginning of March, which indoor colony doesn't have that opportunity to do it. So they are way better. Yes.
When did you take the wrap off? Is it still on, or what? You just put a video out I watched. I'm not sure what your date on the video was.
It was yesterday. Yeah.
Okay, so it's still on then.
Yeah, they are still on. Usually last year we took them out May 7, but usually before Mother's Day, our target. Even if it's warm, we still leave the wraps on because of that. We still having cold night, and if you don't really have to take it off, if it's not on your way, you might as well leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We usually, when we start splitting bees, that's when we start taking wraps off. So our first queen coming next week, and that's where we're gonna start unwrapping. So.
Okay. I was definitely thinking about, yeah, I should have maybe had my colonies wrapped when I moved them out, but that's a lot of work too, isn't it? Like
But it's a lot of
you
work
wrap
for.
yours up, eh?
Yes, it's the first time because you have to invest quite a little bit of money to make your custom wraps,
Yeah.
and but it's quick. It's 10 seconds a hive. It's what we using for indoor bees. That's a one-piece wrap. It's just like a sock. So you put your 4 colonies together and done.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's a good investment. Because the good thing about this, you're not using these wraps very long time or too much, not like outdoor bees, and they will last. Like my first one, they about 10 years, but my outdoor wraps, well, you used to do it maybe. They over 20 years. There are some 30 or 40 years old.
Yeah.
Basically,
You moved some colonies out early, the indoor colonies. You moved some out early and wrapped them up. Did you see a benefit from that, or did you? What happened to them?
no, I didn't do a follow-up video on it yet, but I didn't see any difference. No.
Same as so they're in the same category as the ones that you moved out later.
Yeah, and one reason why they are in the same category because these nukes they were double 6 frame nukes, and I had a problem with starvation, so I took them out and they were on a weak side, and then didn't see any advantages so far. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What have you seen for starvation out there? Heard about? Just a regular year or more or less?
In my outdoor hives, there is not much starvation, but the indoor hives, I notice higher starvation this year than usual years, and that's what I'm hearing from few producers. They mentioned into a lot of starvation. I know some people they blaming starvation this year loss. So.
And your nukes were a little bit different. I think you said you had some trouble with your nukes. What were you thinking that maybe was different with them this year?
Well, first of all, I think they were brooding for longer than usual as we were getting quite a bit late pollen, and we were trying to feed and feed and feed and feed, but I think they were using quite a bit of feed just to establish that the late season brood nest. And and then I think in maybe we doing a little bit too much oxalic acid vaporization on the smaller units, and that's maybe on the way. It's have something to do with their fall cluster, it decreasing the population in the hives in the smaller units, especially. Yeah.
I heard. Last night was a meeting in Morden, and I heard Ian, you were down there, and that kind of topic came up about potentially over treating or too many treatments. I don't know if that.
Well, yeah, like Naz and I talked about this a little bit just between us after the Brandon meeting, when you talked about the results of the oxalic acid treatments indoors. And make sure you correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew. But from what I gathered from it, and you spoke about it here again before I had to step out for a second, but the regular treatment, the summertime treatment, caused detrimental effects on the indoor winter colonies. That's correct, right? And then the lesser dose, which would have been 2 strips instead of 3, maybe, or what was the lesser dose?
2 strips instead of 4, and
Instead
then
of
1
4.
strip instead of 4. Yeah.
Yeah, and those 2 treatments, and I'm not sure how much you can freely talk about it, but those 2 type of treatments were less detrimental to the colonies. That's correct, right?
Upon the spring assessment and looking at the cluster sizes and evaluating them in the field, yes, I can't say for a statistical analysis, which hasn't been done yet. That said, I can say that the high dose, the standard dose, definitely much poor, and I'm sure there'll be a statistical difference. But if you compare a mid or a low dose to the sham, I'm not sure you'll see it. Like the shams did pretty good. The shams look good. they were untreated. They have more mites, but they came out well. Another question is, how well are they going to look 4 weeks from now if they've been
Yeah.
carrying load, right? So will that mid or low dose that kind of looks so now surpass a sham if it's declining a little bit in May because it held those mite levels through the winter? It's not clear yet. But sorry, follow your train of thought if you were.
Yeah, so this is why you're so important to this whole conversation, because I'm talking like a beekeeper and so is Naz, and we're listening to trial, like applied trial that's gone on. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, those bees with the regular treatment of oxalic acid strips in winter, the regular dose was detrimental to their health. It came up and out in bad shape or dead. And you're hearing that from beekeepers at the meeting. Even the one beekeeper was like, "Well, yeah, of course. My colonies are dead. My buddies' colonies are dead." And we're hearing this from beekeepers right across Canada and into the States. The guys in their winter sheds down in the States. There's a lot of dead bees coming to the sheds because they figure the strips inside. So how, as a beekeeper, we're also applying oxalic acid in a vapor form, and we seem to be applying this treatment later into the season because it's killing mites, and that's when the brood is less, so the more mites exposed. So we're getting a good coverage on the bees, and it seems like we're treating more and more, and we're upping our dose all the time. We're told that it has no detrimental effect to our colonies, but what's the chances that we are overdosing our colonies with oxalic acid vapor with those very late treatments before they go into the shed? And maybe that residue of the oxalic within the nest is causing a negative impact to the bees. The reason I say that, because I treat very late in the season to my singles, and I do the same with my nukes. And over the last 3 years, I've had a lot of trouble getting smaller units through winter. Like it used to be, I make these nukes very effortlessly. Make my own queens, making honey on them, 3 boxes, 4 boxes sometimes. Prepare them for winter, put them in. They come out to spectacular shape. Just this little wee sexy little nuke, and then it comes out and explodes into growth. Well, the last 3 years, something's changed. Something's different. And I'm hearing with the other beekeepers talk about this too. What's the difference with trying to get these small units through winter? Why we talk about maybe chemicals, maybe we're talking about disease or something. The one thing that we also have changed over the last 3 years is more application of oxalic acid in vapor form. My dose on the nukes is pretty much the same as I do to my singles. So just maybe some feedback, Matthew. Is there a chance that maybe we're overdosing the colonies? There's more oxalic acid residue in these little colonies they're having to deal with, and they're dying, just like having the oxalic acid strip in there, overdosing them with that, causing a detrimental effect. Is like I'm a beekeeper, causation, right? Just because I'm doing it and they die doesn't mean that's what's killed them. That's how I'm putting it together. But where should we go with this? What's your feedback on that? A little bit of back my mind kind of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've laid it out very well, and it sounds like that's a clear research project. I know that in Saskatchewan, their tech transfer program, they were looking a little bit at the optimization of oxalic acid, and in terms of vaporization, I don't know if they've put out any recommendations as of yet, but that's something that we should follow up on to see if they do have that completed.
Yeah, last night at the South Central Beekeepers Association meeting, Lloyd Harris was there, and he's the one that developed that bee longevity bee longevity graph that just allowed you to see the lifespan of the bee through the entire year, through the whole cycle. And he asked the question. He says, "Well, how does oxalic acid, how does the treatment affect the bee's longevity?" And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I have no idea. Has there been any work in regards to that? Is Sarah Wood, is she doing any type of work like that in the University of Saskatchewan, looking at the effect of the oxalic acid to the bee's health?
In terms of the long-term impacts, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm not sure that they have in the presentations I've seen from that group so far. I know they've presented a lot, but I haven't seen to my knowledge, any experiments that have followed those colonies, for over 6 months or up to a year or so. Because I know that Dr. Rob Curry here in Manitoba has mentioned that there's been some experiments that he's been involved in where they're looking at different treatments and that you might not see those impacts until 8 months later. And you might see that increased in-situ procedure or otherwise. So yeah, it's important to check. One study I reference when I talk about this is one that's coming out of Europe, where they had a few different treatment groups. One was Apistan, one was untreated, and one was oxalic glycerin. And the oxalic glycerin was found to be activating the honeybee's immune system and making it more active. So they didn't know after that, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? But it's doing something, right? It's doing something.
Can you repeat that again? It was doing what to their immune system?
It was activating their immune system. So for prolonged exposure to oxalic acid glycerin was having an effect of activating their kind of a response, an immune response to that exposure, but it was a prolonged response as well.
Okay, how do they measure that? Like, how do you know if it activates their immune system?
I'm guessing some type of gene expression, but I'm not sure actually how that study was done.
That's interesting.
Yes, I was into a stream this winter, and from one European researchers too. And this is exactly what he mentioned, because I give him a question: can I try to leave the strips for experiment in the winter? And he said, absolutely not, because it's going to hurt their stomachs.
Yeah. I mean, and I just wanted to differentiate between, of course, you're talking a lot about vapor and maybe too many treatments and too many grams into different sizes of colonies. But I mean, it's going to be very different too if we're talking about the glycerin strips or we're talking about vapor. And I can hear the common sense prevailing across the beekeeping community and some of the observations, and people aren't really going to go down that path with putting strips or pads into their colonies and putting them into the winter, which is also in Canada not a registered application method, but I can see that it's becoming more common knowledge. However, I guess the point is, this year in Canada, this is now a new legal registered treatment, right? Using oxalic glycerin, whether it's homemade or you buy Viroxan. And one of the challenges that I've heard from beekeepers is that you're putting this, let's say, especially with the strip in, you're putting it in the summer or in May or in June. But it's a big labor issue to be pulling that strip. And so even if beekeepers have best intentions to pull some of these pads and strips and products out, they end up being left in. So one of my other kind of questions is, how is that affecting the colony? Even not these intentional treatments, which we're kind of maybe getting the idea that we should be moving away from, but from an operational standpoint, if you need to be pulling strips when your colony is overflowing with bees and you have 4 strips, they're falling down, they've been chewed apart, you don't have time to do it, so you leave them in. What's the outcome of that? I know that the Alberta Tech Transfer Program did an experiment last year where they kind of looked at something like this, looking at pads and strips and then removing them, looking at the mite control, and then doing titrations on the strips to see how much oxalic was left in them. So I'm looking forward to hearing from them what came of that. But there's also a question of not just what's left in them, but how is it impacting bees, and are you risking your bees?
One thing I want to mention when I talk about this overdose of oxalic acid vaporization, there's a caveat to that, because Naz, you've done that, and you vaporized, or maybe I'll just leave it up to you to explain, but you've treated a yard exclusively with oxalic acid, I believe, and such, and they come out just masterfully. Am I correct?
You are correct, and I can understand this, because before we used to do only 2 vaporization with oxalic acid. That was starting 7 years ago, and this was it. But about 3 years ago, we figured mites we seems like to have more mites, and we have to treat them more. And we treated more, and this is when we see a decrease in colony sizes. But exactly, you're right. I had one specific yard last year, and they had nothing but oxalic acid. They were made as a nukes from queen cells. The first application of oxalic acid they get right after queen got mated, so there was no absolutely zero capped brood. And then after that, they got about 4 or 5 applications in the fall. Plus, they had the oxalic acid strips, and that's the best bees came out of the winter. But the other ones not, unfortunately. So yeah, I think there is a lot of things can be involved, like maybe location. Maybe this location is a little bit more damped, like wet, close to slough, or yeah, I think there is still a lot gotta get done, especially in Canada here, especially in Manitoba or in prairies, because there was lots of experiments done in California, like you mentioned Randy Oliver before. It's totally different climate, and I think maybe their climate not exactly. No, okay, their applications to their climate, they're not exactly the same efficient strips or vaporization doesn't work as efficient as here. Maybe we have to adjust the dose or something like that. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's exactly the point. That's why having this tech program is so useful, because we can ask these questions and really hone in into our specific environment. Because I too talk to California beekeepers, and they're like, "Oh, what's the problem?" You know, like I'm fussing about putting strips in the spring when it's cold, and the bees are a bit stressed. I could be providing a lethal dose to my colonies in a very stressful event, just just for effect of trying to control mites. What's the point, right? At that, but there, I mean, they put it in, and no problems whatsoever. So I think this is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I missed a little bit of that. I was just catching up on the comments and making sure I didn't miss anything. But yeah, it's that early spring application of a strip. It's registered for a spring, summer, fall application, but our April here is not like in a lot of places. So putting an oxalic strip or pad into a colony when they're at their weakest, and in a year like this where they're not moving forward, that could be, like you said, a lethal dose. So
yeah,
I mean, Dr. Nuria Morfin there on our last webinar had said, like, one of the values as well of a program like the KRTP here is like, let us kill our colonies testing it, and then we're okay with that. And then, so I do encourage people, like with this new oxalic glycerin treatment, to try it out, how it's registered as per the label, and set up your experiments if you're trying to figure it out, like, oh, maybe I treated this one with the dose over the summer and these ones not, and whatever, and but if they're unknown territory, I do think there's people who can do kind of controlled experiments and risk killing their own colonies. I just want to point out, Phil's in the chat and he's keeping me on my toes here. Just to be clear, he says those sham colonies didn't get a treatment during the trial, but they did get amitraz strips and oxalic vapes the spring prior. And then in the fall, they got thymol. So when we set up our experiment last fall, everything was treated the same in the fall. They got a round of thymol treatment, or 3 rounds, but 1 application of thymol treatment. And then they had their winter treatment. So they weren't just untreated colonies the whole year and coming out the next year. They had a light fall treatment. So I just want to clarify that.
I love having Phil involved with this program, because he's thinking all the time too, and he just likes to apply something, apply that thought into a trial, and he's hinging on you, Matthew, answering some of these questions. And I love it that he has a YouTube channel and he's putting it up online. And maybe some of the things he's saying on there, you're cringing maybe a little bit, but at the same time, this is beekeepers. We're beekeepers, and we're trying to answer some questions, and you're trying to bring the formality into the conversation. And I think you come across very well that way. But I'm glad Phil's involved in the project. He mentioned here too in the chat here somewhere about indoor vaping with oxalic. I don't know if I would necessarily advise that, because it's extremely hazardous to the health. But he mentioned that those colonies look good, so that puts my back of my mind thinking kind of to the side. But it'd be neat to try to overdose a colony to see if, in fact, oxalic acid vapor in the fall is detrimental, like those strips are. What's the chances it's the glycerin that's causing the trouble?
I'm not aware. What's the chances it's the glycerin causing the trouble? Well, I mean, so you asked that question to be able to say, I still want to use oxalic, but I just don't want to use that. Yeah. Like, I mean, I do know that Sarah Wood in Saskatchewan did an experiment on indoor winter colonies that Alvaro mentioned in our last webinar there. And it had using the sugar syrup solution and the dribble on indoor winter colonies, and a very bad effect on the bees. But vaping, I'm not really, I'm not sure. But it's just like, whether it's glycerin or it's not the glycerin, it's something. So that application could be out the window potentially. And I'm not saying that it is out the window. I think our study is still ongoing, and we're going to get results from that. To see how it could be applied. Some people have suggested that it just needs to be a shorter treatment window when it's on indoor colonies. And then for outdoor colonies, I haven't done any of that work, so I can't speak to it.
So by saying shorter treatment, by how much shorter?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're doing a regular treatment, so 42 days. But can you get let's say something happens with 2 yards and you didn't get to them, or somebody has 150 colonies and they got sick and they couldn't treat them. What's their Hail Mary at the end? Would it be like putting a strip in before they go inside and then pulling them out? It's a heck of a lot of work, but there are certain circumstances in which, different things might work out. So a shorter treatment window, I suppose we have to go to the data. It's been presented at a couple conventions and it's not published yet, but you see the mite fall is pretty good, pretty quick, like the knockdown with the Roxanne strips in our experiment. And I mean, they say that it has a fast knockdown on their packaging. At the same time, all beekeepers say that you won't get a good knockdown with this product. And I mean, I just attribute that to being winter colonies indoors. There's not a lot of brood, so they're all exposed and you are getting some knockdown. But when you do have a lot of brood in there, you won't see the knockdown. So I think you could get a good knockdown in it probably within a few weeks period, if there's no brood.
Do you think, let's say we put these strips before they go in the winter and leave them for 2 weeks, do you think itself that interruption of the cluster, would that make effect maybe on mortality too? So bees, you put them in, you put the strips, fine, but then after those 2 or 3 weeks, you make lots of noise because you have to leave the boxes, you have to use the forklifts, and then you open in the lids and you stir the bees up. Maybe that's have something to do with it too.
Yeah, for sure. I don't like, as a beekeeper, I don't like that feeling. I don't want to open the hive. I don't have time to open the hive. I don't like messing with them. So I'd agree with you on that.
This is the solution, I think. If this is what we have to do, there is a system to do it. I already been thinking about it. You can make some kind of gantry or something if you don't really want to use a forklift, something to go and lift your stack so you can apply your product. That's not a problem. But if that's working, because we don't really want to, like we mentioned before, kill our bees too.
Yeah, if we can find a treatment method. I mean, the reason why beekeepers are focusing on this time of year is because it's an opportune time to target the mites. It's a broodless time within the period of the year, and we're bringing them in. Indoor wintering situation anyways, we're bringing them into one location. We're not busy with anything else generally. We can, factor in some time to be able to go through and provide the treatment. I mean, there's a lot of advantages maybe to look at this period of time to take advantage of the broodlessness stage, the vulnerable nature of the mites, and kill them. Maybe we're saying some negative effects, but it doesn't mean we can't tweak things to make it work, right? What do we have left to treat for our mites right now? Amitraz or thymol, formic. I mean, what else do we have? We need another tool in the toolbox, right?
So I just wanted to ask both of you, like, if you're using oxalic glycerin this spring, summer, what's your approach here? And are you doing strip? Are you making it yourself? Or are you going to go for a pad? What's your preference, or are you still experimenting?
Yeah, I'm just kind of it's dabbling under recommendations, of course, and then some other guidance from other beekeepers, but trying to get into that 40-gram range with I have cardboard strips I made up to it's holding 11 grams of oxalic. Then I also have some strips from a guy from Alberta. I think what's his concentration of his strips? Is it 16 grams, 15 grams? I forget what he said. It's a little bit more, but I'm just a little bit and I have some sponges too that I chopped up into fours, and I have 50 grams of product for the full sponge divided by four. So I'm just the question that I'm asking myself is when I'm going to put them in. I'm not going to put them in now because they're stressed, but I'm going to be putting them in probably in June, anticipating the honey flow, and just how many strips am I going to put in. My question is, what is an overdose? Uh, considering the conditions, considering the size of the colonies, considering the flow, considering all these factors. Like, I'm still not very clear on what an overdose is. If I put 4 strips in, is that going to cause a reduction in honey flow? If I put 3 strips in, is that enough to be able to hold the mites down? Not to waste my time. It's just those certain things I'm not certain about. Maybe Naz has that more clarity on that, but I'm just not familiar enough with the product to be able to answer those questions to really, be certain what my dose is going into summer.
Well, I mean, they're good questions. I'm just going to speak to the general audience and saying that the label says it's for the homemade, it's 40 grams per colony, single or double. And for the Viroxan product, it's 7 grams per strip. You're doing 1 strip per 2.5 frames of bees. So if you have a 10 frame box, you have 28 grams. Then if you have a double, they say put in 2 more strips. So you put 6 strips, that's 42 grams. So they kind of levels out at that 40-gram mark. So I'll just put that out there as the label instructions on it. But when are you thinking about applying it?
Well, later on in June, anyways, is what I was thinking about. When the colonies are stronger and more capable, and more food coming in and the colonies and growing. That's my type of thinking. So there's no stress.
Okay, and Naz, what do you have to say?
We'll be trying this year, as it's legal now, to make it our own ones, and we'll be trying strips, just like Ian said. We'll be trying making strips and making sponges as well. We'll be focusing this year to put on some specific yards. We'll be putting half and half to see a result. Which one working better, and we'll go from there. Like it's new for us, like for everybody. We have to learn now. And we'll be putting strips and sponges at the time we are going to start supering. So I believe that would be beginning of June, not earlier than that. Just to not stressing those bees.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I forget who said it during that webinar you put on, Matthew. But there was mention about the 40-gram treatment not causing any detrimental effect to the bees themselves. They didn't see any. Well, they seen maybe a little bit of casualty to the brood, but easily recovered, and the nests grew much the same. But they did mention something about a reduction in honey production, and I wasn't quite certain on the reason of that.
Yeah, they were using, I think, like more like a shop towel. This was like done some years ago, or what it was basically sitting flat on top. They saw a reduction in the whole hive weight. So I think they weighed the whole hive, and they weren't sure why, because they didn't see a reduction in population or in brood production. So they thought one idea was like, oh, well, maybe was it forcing the bees to move around it in a different way or change their bee behavior in some way? They weren't sure, but they did measure that. So I did talk to a beekeeper this week who has worked with the Swedish sponges a lot. And I said to him, and he also follows, Randy Oliver a little bit and more than me. So I said to him, what's Randy Oliver's kind of take on this? From what I could understand, it was that Randy Oliver's maybe more on the Swedish sponges, and people can answer in the chat because they might know. And I thought it's kind of funny that nobody is selling something that just sits flat on top. Viroxan is selling a strip that hangs down. a lot of the people who are making their own this year have bought these cardboard strips that hang down. I just wonder if it's maybe there's a comfort, and we used to put in an Apistan strip, we used to put in Apivar strip. Now we're going to put in a new strip, and it's going to fix our bees. I don't know.
Well, maybe that's all there is to it. I put my money on that.
We were talking about kind of the sponges, the pros and cons. He said that it does gum up at the bottom of the sponges, and you do kind of got to clean in between your frames sometimes because they won't have that contact with the bottom of the sponge. So you got to, there's these tips and tricks that you'll learn as you're using these new treatments. And I know I've heard other people talk about how these strips, some of them like them, but some people find that the strips fall down or they're hard to get out, and then that becomes an operational issue later. So whatever, there's these pros and cons to each method, and people need to find what works for their operation, from what I can tell. But in terms of efficacy, I'm not sure if there's been a one-on-one comparison in Canada that's been like in a controlled study for strips and pads. Sorry, did I jump way off your question? I don't even know where I started there, but
I don't even remember my question. But
okay.
So the strips that I know it's just an approved treatment now, but talking to beekeepers, other places that put the strips in through the summer, and it gets chewed up. You're trying to take the old strips out because the strips generally are left in there, but they chew them up, hard to take out. So the residual strip that's left in there, let's say going into winter, that's probably used up, right? Like the oxalic acid and the glycerin is probably used up. So it's just basically a piece of cardboard in there now. And would that have any effect to the bees through winter? Probably not, because it's a very low dose, right?
I don't know, because what we noticed too, there's some strips would be moist, wet, and some would be just like you put them in. Some would be dry. So I think should be wouldn't hurt if somebody will test them. How much left in it? What's in it left after that winter, or a recommended period of use after 4 weeks?
Yeah, and Alberta. Yeah, I was going to say, the Alberta Tech Transfer Program, I know they were looking at that, so I'll be looking to, once they get some results on what's left in them, to share with everybody. But
one thing about I talked to a beekeeper who put the sponges in through a winter and killed the colonies. Of course, there's a common theme here, right? But the sponges, they figure, they're on top of the bars. And in a wintering colony, they figure the sponges absorb moisture, and they were watching the bees drink like water, the condensed water that's absorbed in the sponges, and that must have been detrimental to them and probably burnt their stomachs. That doesn't sound like a good situation there. So definitely not putting sponges in through the wintering periods. And the cardboard strips is thought to be less absorbent, so they're not attracting as much moisture into them, which maybe helps the situation a lot better. Maybe the sponges do, which I'm got me thinking. Then, well, if I'm going to put sponges on in a cold spring, maybe the same type of situation is going to happen, where the bees, clustered up and they're taking on moisture, and then they go feed off the sponge, where the cardboard strip, maybe they're not going to. It's just, I'm not sure about that. I'm going to be trying the sponges through the summer period, though, is where I'm going to try to use them, not in the spring.
Right.
So we probably kicked the oxalic acid strips to death, I think, eh?
Yeah.
But I'm hearing lots of beekeepers will be using, because it's another tool in the box. And then even with the honey, same thing. I hear the people saying reduction in honey production, 10% or so. Well, I will take that 10% if I can keep the mite controlled.
Well, there's a point. Yeah, that's a point.
But then we have to learn how to use them properly. If you're gonna start taking 10% loss on honey and then 10 to 15% loss on bees over winter because of the strips, so it adds up pretty quick.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's just a time. We just have to figure it out the best method to use them in our climate here.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm going to mention again, because I always do, and it's always annoying to the host, is mixing treatments. I know it's not something that we like to talk about, but beekeepers do it all the time. So we're going to put these oxalic acid strips in, but we also want to, follow through with something else. Do we have to take the strips out to apply formic, or take the strips out to apply an oxalic acid vaporization? Or what about the strips and having Apivar in there at the same time? There's all these things, right? That maybe we shouldn't be doing as beekeepers, but beekeepers are doing it. So is there a good combo that we can take advantage there? I think there probably is.
Yeah, that's another tough one.
It's not on the label, right? But it's what you call tank mixing. Farmers do it a lot. And if we can, maybe I won't go too far down this rabbit hole, but there's, some formulations American beekeepers are using with the Amatraz, with a little bit of thymol, just seems to get the bees working a little bit more over the product, and it seems to control the mites a little bit better. And when the effectiveness of the Amatraz is, becoming lesser and lesser, just applying another product to help bring the efficacy up a little bit. There's lots of things like that going on. So now we throw oxalic acid strips into the equation, and how does that actually affect everything? Is it to the absolute detriment, or do we see some benefit from that? So that's something the beekeepers are going to be doing over the next little while.
And maybe it does make an effect, because if you back up our conversation, the ones never receive anything else but oxalic, they did good. That kind of tells you something.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
See, as we're talking, this is why it's very important to have meetings and chats like this, because as we talk or we think to ourselves, it's not like that. But when we start talking with somebody, and then it's coming back to your mind, and there's a few things, and we can shuffle stuff around, and maybe we can figure it out.
Yeah.
I did put a link in the chat. It is a study out of Ohio. It's called Adjuvants to Improve Efficacy of Miticides in Honeybee Colonies to Control Varroa. So there are people out there doing some of this work, but definitely more needs to be done. Yeah. Any other comments on industry items or anything else that's come up? And
yeah, you mentioned you'll be doing a hygienic test with the free skill brood. When would be available? Maybe if somebody watching us from Manitoba here would be interested in it.
Yeah, basically we usually start doing the free skill brood assays at this time, but even this week is sometimes a little bit early on a regular year. Since we're a little bit behind, you really want to see all those colonies that we're going to be testing on to be pretty well balanced in their population dynamics and decently strong. So whenever that kind of happens over the next week or so, we'll be ready to come out and help people with the breeder selection doing the free skill brood assays. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Naz, how many pollen patties have you put on this spring for the most part?
We're on a third round right now.
Okay.
We started this week third round, so that's 3 pounds, about 5 to 6 pounds right now.
Okay.
You have to do it, because this is how we keep these strong colonies alive and progressing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going. They would go downhill.
Yeah. Well, we'll finally get the good flow, I think, of fresh pollen this weekend and into next week. But
hopefully, it seems like that weather guy been just moving those days, week after week.
There's a joke about that, right? Good weather at the end of the forecast.
Yeah, no, never happens. It'd been nice today. They hardly fly, and they no. The problem is when we get this good weather, especially in the spring here, then we get too much wind, and they just sit at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Brad
right.
Hogg sent me a link a little while ago. Frederick Dunn, he has a little podcast going on, and he brought a guy on. The name was Adam Strickland, I think it is. He did a study on black mold in syrup. Black mold in syrup pails or in your holding tank, and the effect the black mold has on the health of the bees, and using bleach to kill the mold or to prevent mold from forming. And I've always wondered about it, and I've always wondered if bleach, hurt the bees. So I was always leaning against not using it. But his study had shown that the colonies fed with a certain amount, I'm not sure how much it was, a certain amount of bleach within the feed, not only controlled the mold within the pails, but provided for healthier colonies, more colonies living through winter. So I thought that was extremely interesting because I know my pails, I look into my pails and there's black mold in there. I wash them. I wash them every year. I get the kids to do it. They hate the job, but they do it. I wash it out and I wash my syrup tank out every year just to try to keep a cleaner tank. But I'm still like my tank that I take the syrup out to the yards in, it's black mold in there. And he's saying that with a little bit of bleach in there controls the black mold. And not only that, makes for a healthier bee. So have you heard anything like that, Matthew?
I mean, we've heard that about why people put bleach into the syrup. I mean, I did hear one beekeeper say that he thought the Pro Health that he was putting in was helping keeping his pails clean. I wonder what ratio he was putting it in at.
Yeah, and then that's very expensive too if you put it at the recommended dose to be able to control that, where bleach is very, very cheap.
I have a friend. I have a friend every year he put the bleach in his syrup.
Do you do yours, Naz?
No, but I probably gonna start. I ask Stein every year. I should try it, but I never done. But good friend of mine every year. I can't remember how much he would put. I think cup per tote. But I have to check on it. But he does every year. He does every year, and not because of to prevent the mold or anything, but he pretty confident it helps bees with the gut health.
Yeah. I've always been a little bit cautious because I didn't want to kill my bees or provide. I think, boy, how can that be good for the bees? It's going to kill the bees. So I've never done it. But I'm talking to beekeepers that are wintering bees and maybe having a poor outcome, and they're noticing a lot of yeast infection within the bees' guts. I mean, where's that yeast infection coming from? It could be coming from, feeding through contaminated equipment, right? And infecting the bees' guts, and then they're just dying, making a mess in the front of the net of colonies. So the bleach maybe would be helping with that also. Maybe that's why there's positive results.
Yeah.
They did say though in the study that there wasn't. I wish I would have wrote it down, but they're looking at nosema infection, and the nosema infection didn't change with the bleach in there. So it wasn't like a treatment for nosema or anything like that. There's very small difference, not something that's not noticeable, but it resulted in healthier bees. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I definitely have an aversion to it, just based on, like you said, kind of that instinct. But I don't know. I just good quality feed, but it's all valid questions to ask. And I did look up that study just now. Yeah, it says Adam Strickland and the bleach and syrup study. So I'll follow up on that. See what's up.
What would yeah? I'm not sure what his dose was, but it wasn't very much. I think he put a comment up by Phil. I didn't see it. Could you put Phil's comment up again? What did he say? Crap load of bleach to make a difference on a semi-load. Well, I forget what he was talking about his dose. I'll have to review it. It didn't seem like a lot. It wasn't a lot. But ask Justin there how much bleach he uses for his treatment.
Well, there you go. You just asked him.
Oh, there we go. I guess I asked him. Do you know how much your friend was using, Naz?
I believe cup per tote.
Cup per tote? Okay.
I believe so. But I guess if he watching us, he can put it in the chat. Yeah, but I will ask him again. Yeah. Like when we
Ian,
feed,
what did,
we use in hive top feeders, so we don't see any mold because bees cleaning up. There would be never mold in the hive top feeder, so we don't have a issue with the molds. And same thing with in the tanks because we mix in our own syrup for the last 3 or 4 years, and yeah, there is no mold whatsoever. You finish feeding, you don't have anything overstocked, so yeah.
oops.
Tablespoon per gallon. Yeah, that sounds
Brad,
familiar.
Brad says it was 1.2 liters per 1,000 liters. Where's your? I don't know where all these different things are coming from. But.
Yeah, the dose would be pretty important. You wouldn't want to overdose it, but
Oh,
it's
here we
not
go.
that expensive.
This is Justin's comment.
So just over 5 cups for 250 gallon. Yeah. If it'll keep my pails cleaner, then I'll be happy too. And if it makes for healthier bees, then to boot.
Yeah. What if it has a detrimental impact?
And that's why we have you here.
Okay.
Maybe we could run a citizen science experiment.
I think what could take this question to Guelph there. They have that bee gut project and Brendan Daisley, and I might pose the question to him and see what type of response he has because yeah, why don't we ask the experts working on gut health and different things and see what they think about it. All right.
And just one thing before we maybe end it here. And again, like going back to the other webinar I was watching, when those recommended timelines for your treatments, they always say spring, but I think they should correct themselves. Depends where you are, because my spring, so if they say in Europe is in March, well, maybe March for me, it's not very good idea to put these strips in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just the thing that Ian was talking about too. Like, what's the early season impacts on a weak or medium-sized colony, and that's not in a year like this, that's not growing very fast.
No, like we still, I would say it's still not spring. Like I wouldn't put anything with the oxalic with the glycerin right now because it's just too cold.
But yeah, the major advantage of this glycerin is that it's also can be used with honey superzone, right? So using the tools that we have in the times of the year that when we know how to use them and get a decent outcome, and then having this added advantage of treating with honey superzone, I mean, that's a big thing, I think, in my perspective.
What do you think, Matthew? Is there a way to test oxalic acid?
Like, oh, you want to test the purity of it?
Crystal. I have the same thing. Beekeepers, they saying maybe that's something in oxalic acid, purity of it.
Yeah, I would be a question for a lab. Probably can't be that complicated, you would think. But yeah, you know what? I should ask around about that and look into what the cost would be and see what they can do, because if it isn't that difficult and it isn't that expensive, then why not? It's nice to have answers rather than have these doubts and suspicions.
It would be nice to get it tested, so it's kind of would be out of your chest and something to keep in mind.
Oh, you know what? Jonathan Hofer's got a question. What ratio of syrup are you feeding? But are you talking about the spring, Jonathan, or the fall? These guys... Well, what are you guys feeding right now in the spring?
When I coming out of the shed, I fed them a heavy syrup just to get feed into them, and I didn't want to have a lot of drip issues because it was cold. The daytime, nighttime, the fluctuation in temperature, you get that drip. So I fed a heavy syrup then, just to emergency feed is what I was doing. But now I've switched to I've watered down the syrup a bit. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I've made the syrup so it flows really easily through my syrup pump, through the water pump. So I bet you I'm I'm a little heavier than 1-to-1 yet, I bet you, but it's a lot thinner than the bees are taking to it. They're devouring that right now, and I think that's more of a stimulative ratio. So I've gone more thin now.
Yeah, we using same thing. We using in the spring 65 water, 45 sugar. And then as the spring progresses, we go even thinner. We go 60 water, 40 sugar. Because that's all they need. They need that moisture. They doesn't need that too much sugar. You don't want to put them in the winter. That's when we mix. And fall mix as well, we mix in the fall. We do in 1 to 1.5. So 1 part water and 1.5, 1.5 part of sugar. And we done it for 4 years now. Doesn't make any difference.
So what happened there with your early feeding, Naz, in the spring? You were getting the fondant in, and you were also doing, I think, syrup and Ziploc bags. I mean, the
Yes.
fondant's easy, right? You don't need to fill the bags. You don't need no mess, but costs more probably. So
Yeah.
how did that go, or what are you thinking?
One that cost quite a bit more, and I used 2 different products of kinds of fondant. They took them similarly fine. They took the one and they took the other brand, but the bags are cheaper, little bit more messy, but it works. And that's kind of when we use in bags, that's kind of emergency feeding. We go throw the bags on everything, and then we come back right away, and we actually fill in frames with syrup. And this is, to me, this is the best method, because you fill that syrup, you put it in a frame, and you put it right beside the brood. So this way cluster doesn't, there's no way to move it from there. They have to take it.
Yeah, that's
Just
an
had
impressive system.
a guy just told me his bleach. He just sent me a message. He uses a bleach concentration to 25 parts per million. So what did he say there? So 10 liters per semi-load is what he uses.
That's not much.
That's not a lot.
10 liters per semi-load. And then you got Phil on here, says at Brad's rate, it's 40 liters a semi-load. So be careful, people.
Yeah, we'd have to focus. I can narrow in on that concentration. Not sure how to, we have to do math to figure the 25 parts per million. But just using his math at face value, 25 parts per million is 10 liters per semi-load.
Well,
there you go.
The chat is super interesting. I mean, yeah, because a lot of people in the chat are like using bleach. I'm like, okay, wow, this is more popular than I thought. I mean, I've heard about it for years and over time, and people do it and they don't. But
and then
I guess it's a lot more common practice.
Yeah, this beekeeper also goes on to say it doesn't stay in the syrup long. The bleach consumes the yeast, and the bleach is gone after. So in summer, he needs to add that bleach concentration once per month. So that's interesting.
And that responds to Phil's comment that he says, no way the rate of chlorine would control the mold.
According to, what did I say his name was? Strickland? According to him, it does.
Yeah, and Brad I'll just do the due diligence of pointing out that Brad says that's not his ratio. It was the science guy that you're referencing who did that. Brad hasn't done it. So just want to get his comment there.
That's so there's consensus on that dose then, 10 per semi-load, depending how big the semi is, I guess. But yeah, any rate, there you go. I'm going to try it. So the other question, Matthew, would be, so let's say a beekeeper's treating, oxytetracycline through a syrup. Would the bleach have a detrimental effect, or fumagillin? Is there a negative effect? Does it neutralize or does it kill off that treatment?
I mean, honestly, I have no idea, but it doesn't sound like something I want to experiment with without knowing.
No, exactly.
Especially for the bee health and for the potential synergistic effect and for throwing your money out the window. But
yeah, there's that too. You just, just throw everything out the window.
So, yeah. It's that I mean, I guess that's why we stick to the main things that we do. And I personally, I don't use a lot of stuff in my syrup, but Yeah.
Phil says there'd be a waste of time, but I have to push back on that because that Adam Strickland did say in his study that it did prevent mold growth, the black mold in his. If we could, would you be able to link that study to this chat, Matthew, at all?
I'll give it a shot.
He did claim that it didn't eliminate the mold growth, but it did decrease it, and it did result in a healthier bee, better wintering and such. So there had to be effect there. He's correlating effect to the bleach.
Did he mention anything about spring? If you put that bleach in the spring syrup feed?
I think. Oh, that I'm not certain about.
It would be, if it's working in the spring too, would be nice too.
Oh, this guy tells me also he agrees with Phil. Push back on it killing the black mold. He's been doing it for 10 years. Oh no, he's saying that he's been doing it for 10 years and he has no mold growth in his bulk tank. So he's saying that it does work against the mold. Yeah.
But then maybe you think for how long does this guy leaving that syrup in the tanks? Maybe if it's only for a week or two at the time, that's fine. But if you leave it over winter, that's maybe different.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to leave it over summer, that's for sure. I wouldn't want to count on it for that.
All right, folks. Yeah. Well, if there's any other hot topics, someone has to get in a last question in the chat. They can do that now. Otherwise, Ian probably wants to go eat supper. What did you get up to out there today, Ian?
Today, we have a bunch of things going on. We didn't get any bee work done because it's too cold. I've just kind of put the pause on all bee work until we get better weather. Just, we have feed on there, and that's what else am I supposed to do, right? I can't baby them to make them better. So I'm just leaving them to their own accord and giving them feed. And I've been moving them out to their summer yard, so the cool weather is good for that. But I'm also getting distracted business, and we started seeding. So we have 500 acres of wheat in right now. So we're, land prep and fertilizer, and have my daughter running the speed disc and everything like that. So we're well into that, just about to get into corn. It's too cold for corn yet. But if you wonder when the canola is going to be sowed, we've got a ways to go yet. It's too cold for canola. It's going to be after the corn and the sunflower. So we're going to be pushing June before we start with the canola, or it's not going to be early this year.
You hearing any prediction for canola acreage size this year from guys?
There's talk about there being less canola acres for whatever reason, I'm not sure. But the canola price actually isn't that bad. With the new crush plant in Regina, they've been sending out some bids, and it's quite attractive. So with this instability, with fertilizer pricing and all this kind of stuff, and then the market's going like this all the time, everybody's a little bit nervous. But I would wager that canola would be much the same for acreage. I'm not hearing my neighbors switching out.
No, I talked to one of my landowners the other day, and he mentioned last year I never gonna put canola again, but he's seeding this year.
We say that every spring too. It's a finicky damn crop. I hate canola with a passion. It's a love-hate relationship. Yeah. There is problem with Verticillium wilt in canola, so guys are going to have to broaden their rotation out a little bit. Some guys go every second year, which can't be done anymore, so have to go every third year. Our farm's going every fourth year just to help with the Verticillium wilt, because it's devastating. It'll take the whole crop right out. It hurt our farm for production 3 years ago, so we've added into the rotation. So that might be a reason why guys are pulling back on canola a little bit, just trying to bring more crop into the rotation.
And Naz, what else did you get up to today?
Oh, we were feeding bees. We were adding more patties and more syrup, and that's about it. That's all we do every day after day.
Yeah. So for those who might be tuning in because they're tuning into Ian's, and if they're not familiar with Naz's channel, check it out. And Naz has a frame filler system, which is just a coffee can with holes in it. You dip it in the sugar syrup. You just pull it, run it over the frame. It fills the cells with syrup, and he puts it in the colonies. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Little...
there is actually a frame filler. I think it was made in Manitoba a long time ago. There is lots of people using it. We just don't know, because to know it, you have to put it on that YouTube. And yeah, all I use just a coffee can with 2-inch nails, a whole bunch of holes in the center, and it's worked perfectly fine. It's probably, well, it's slower than a frame filler, but not that much slower. And this way, if I need 5 frames, I'll fill 5 frames. With the frame filler, basically, you have to fill enough to feed your whole yard. And then all of a sudden, you have a leftover, and then it's mass. But this way, it's you have to try it.
Yep. Okay.
And I think if you finish in here, maybe you should mention about our Manitoba Field Day, in case somebody watching from around here and they don't know about that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because this beginning of this chat was kind of following up on the BABA meeting in Brandon, and I think so. The Manitoba Beekeepers Association Field Day is going to take place on June 20th in Boulder, Manitoba. It's not that far away from Brandon. So I think it's there's no BABA meeting in the summer, but everybody can come out to this. And I'm sure we'll have a bit of a roundtable discussion to start the day off. We'll have some guests speaking. We also have people coming off to show off their hive loaders. So there's a few different companies. 2 are Manitoba made, and then there's the Easy Loader demonstration, and there's the Cancade hive loader demonstration, and Heritage Steel hive loader demonstration. So if you're curious about them, come out and check it out. We'll be putting up more information about it and more speakers confirmed once we get it confirmed. But that's June 20th. It's a Saturday. So, yeah. All right. I'll end it here, and I don't know. We'll catch up another time. Thanks for joining, everybody, and have a good evening.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks, Matthew, for putting it on. Good to see you again, Naz.